When application completion rates drop, something is off. Students aren't getting the support they need, and that's affecting your numbers. Enter Element 451's AI assistants. They step in where students struggle, offering real-time answers and advice, guiding them through every step. Learn how AI assistants can boost your enrollment outcomes. Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Welcome to The Application, a podcast focused on actionable takeaways to help you level up your marketing and enrollment management game. I'm your host, Dr. Allison Tercio, Assistant Vice President of Enrollment and Marketing at Siena College. Join me every Tuesday for discussions with some of the best minds in higher ed marketing and enrollment management. The Application is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher ed professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal faves linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Whether you're crafting the perfect email subject line or polishing a web page, the right words can make all the difference. The secret sauce behind successful campaigns and content is often copywriting. Today's guest is Julie Johnson Novara. Julie's a former teacher who spent 15 years educating students across 3 continents before pivoting to a career in copywriting. Now, she's channeling her love for writing and education into helping brands and higher ed institutions tell their stories more effectively. Julie, welcome to The Application.
Thank you so much, Allison. It's great to be here with you.
You've lived and taught all over the world. What's one thing you've learned from your travels that you bring into your copywriting work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thanks for asking it, because I love that I had the opportunity to live and work around the world. And I feel like I'm a better person because of that experience. And I think one thing that it really gave me is a broader perspective. And so that helps me a lot in being able to think about how words are or messages are being received by folks who see things through a different lens than I do. In copywriting, of course, that would be how different audiences are receiving the messages that I'm writing. And so I think that's a very useful skill that I've developed partly as a result of being able to be immersed in other cultures.
And that's really valuable, especially in higher ed and for enrollment marketing when you think about it, because almost all of us who are putting copywriting skills to the test, let's say, we're speaking to an audience we're not part of. Or maybe we once were part of it, but we aren't any longer.
Right. Yeah. Being able to think about it in terms of where they are and maybe what they are thinking and how they are receiving it is very helpful. Yeah.
All right. Before we dive in, if you're enjoying this conversation so far, just take a quick moment to recommend the Application podcast wherever you're listening. It's the best way to support the show and help others discover these helpful tips. All right. Back to Julie. For our listeners who are tasked with writing copy, what are some of the key elements of effective copywriting specifically for enrollment marketers?
I think I would start with audience. So audience first. Who is it that you're talking to and where are they? Your non-traditional students versus your international students versus your first-year students, they're all going to be maybe in different places finding you. And so really knowing as much as you can about them and about where and how they're finding you and about what their concerns are. So they're all going to have, different concerns about maybe cost or career options or other things that they're thinking about as they're considering your institution. So really knowing who they are, where they are, and what message is going to resonate with them is one piece of it. Another piece I would say is to give them an experience. Really, as you're writing, take them on an experience of knowing what it's like or feeling what it's like to sit in your classrooms, to talk with your professors, to be around other students. What does that feel like?
I like how you're using the word feel, because we get really focused on the words and like what we want to say about our institution, right? Like the messages we feel like we have to get across, maybe the points in the brand platform that have to be in everything that we're producing. But what it really comes down to, what people are going to remember, is how a piece of content made them feel.
Absolutely. And the more you can make them feel or experience what it's like to be there with you in your campus, your professors, the other students, the better.
Do you have any favorite ways that help you sort of center on the student and perhaps what they're feeling in that moment or what they need in the moment? For instance, I really love the activity of an empathy map. I love that. I love doing that before I sit down and write, to be able to sort of put myself in their place in that moment. And I think it helps me write better to the audience. Do you have any tips or tools that you really like to use like that?
I would say I like that idea. I'm just more visualize. I literally sit, maybe even close my eyes and picture, okay, I am this person. I'm going to this classroom. What am I feeling and what am I thinking? So that's kind of similar, right? You're still trying to put yourself in their shoes. And so that's some of what I do. Yeah.
I love that. I think one of the content types that is most common if you're working in enrollment marketing is emails, right? We have to write a lot of emails to students, whether you're an admissions counselor, the enrollment comms person, or on the marketing team. Emails are sort of central to all the communications that we're doing to prospective students. So can you give me an example of how to sort of approach that, what you're talking about, centering yourself on the audience and then writing to them? How would you do that for something like an email campaign?
In emails, if you're thinking audience first, definitely segmenting your email for different audiences and then personalizing it as much as you can. So I read a statistic just this morning or earlier this week. I'm going to pull it up real quick. That 84% of consumers say that being treated like a person and not a number is extremely important in their buying decisions. I think we can apply that here in terms of making students feel like a person, not just another student, but that you're talking to them. And I think the way you can do that more specifically is, so if your audience, I'm going to go back to non-traditional students because that's just what came to my mind. Maybe they're concerned about the cost of going back to college and they're balancing work and family life. And here's an expense. In your email that's targeting those folks, maybe use a story or a testimonial of another non-traditional student that was able to get financial aid or grants or different things to piece together that financial part of the expense and actually speak to the person who's concerned about that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It totally does. I really like that you're hitting the objection head on. You're not shying away from it. You're actually, instead of I know they're not going to want to talk about this because it's one of the negatives or they have objections for this. So I'm going to talk about all these other topics so that I don't have to directly speak to that. But instead, you're just going right at it directly. You know what's on their mind and that's what you're going to talk about.
Right. And I think it's actually very important to do that because the more you can address what they're thinking, the more they feel like you're talking to them.
What about the flip side? I'm wondering, what does this look like when it's going badly? What are some common pitfalls that you see happening in higher ed copywriting that all of us can start recognizing and stop doing?
Yeah, I think one thing would be inconsistent messaging, possibly where maybe a website is partially updated, but not fully, or maybe one department is still using an old tagline and some departments are trying to use a new tagline. So really trying to be consistent with that. And then kind of going back to what we were just saying, really targeting each audience and addressing their specific concerns. Maybe actually the pitfall will be not doing that, just talking more broadly. And then I think it's easy to just say kind of the same things that everyone else is saying. You know, we have a tight-knit community. We have expert faculty and
undergraduate
and things like that.
research. study
Right.
abroad.
Right. And it's all
Community.
true.
Yeah.
Right.
It
It's
is all true,
true.
but it's not necessarily special, right? How can we talk about
Right.
some of those things in ways
Right.
that resonate and feel special and feel memorable when they're looking at a sea of college websites and a sea of college emails? How can we do that?
Exactly. And that's really the point, is that those are really broad generalizations that you don't stand out at all. So to really, really dig deep to understand, what is your unique way of addressing the student concerns? What is your unique way? What do you bring that is different than all the others? I always think about it as like painting a picture for the student. We kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, but painting a picture, giving them an experience of, okay, what does it feel like there? Rather than just saying, hey, we have a community. What does that community feel like? And use real visuals, the whole show, don't tell thing that you've heard, a million times probably. I think that applies here though, more than just saying we have a community or saying we have expert faculty. Really show it.
I think one of the hardest things is to get to that special or understand that approach. So as a copywriter, when you come in and you're helping a brand do some of this stuff, how do you help get to what's special so that you're not just stating the generic offerings that every college or every brand is bringing to the table, and you figure out what the special angle is for that particular institution?
Well, it definitely involves talking to a lot of different people, a lot of different, I'll just use the word stakeholders, different parts of the puzzle. And I would say also talking directly to your audience, doing interviews with students, with alumni, with maybe faculty members, to really understand what they experienced. And when you understand what they experienced, you can actually use their words to communicate to others like them.
And not just in testimonials either, is what you're saying, right? Because of course you can share quotes from faculty, students, and alumni, but what you're saying is you put it in their language.
Yes.
When you're doing that thing of trying to make someone actually feel what it would be like to experiencing what you're describing.
Right. Absolutely.
And what are the quick fixes? What are the things that we need to be watching out for so that we're avoiding some of these pitfalls? Like, so for instance, you're talking about we don't want to be generic, so we have to put the work in and we have to go talk to the stakeholders and we have to go talk to our audience to be able to get at something that's special and that's going to actually resonate with them. But what are some of those other habits maybe that we need to just always be employing to make sure our copywriting is really strong? Hey, it's Allison. Element 451 is hosting the AI Engage Summit on October 29th and 30th. This free virtual event features many of your favorite Enrollify creators, including me, and will explore AI's impact on student engagement, enrollment marketing, and institutional success. Learn how to tap into the power of AI to enhance student communications, personalize the admissions process, support at-risk students, and more. Plus, hear directly from current students on how AI is influencing their engagement and experience of campus life. Don't miss my session on how our team at Sienna uses AI to craft personalized communications for students and parents throughout the college search process. It's at 2:30 on October 29th. The AI Engage Summit is your guide to understanding and applying AI at your school. Registration is free. Visit Element 451 to save your spot. Now back to the show.
I think the first thing is knowing the goal of each piece of content. I think you could say the goal and the audience. If you know the goal, then the audience is a part of that. But, if you get in the car to drive somewhere, but you don't know where you're going, you can just drive aimlessly for hours and hours. And I think copywriting can be that way too. If you sit down to write a landing page, social media posts or other things, what are you really trying to do with that landing page? What is that action that you want someone to take after they have gotten to the end of that landing page? You really need to know that before you ever write one word of the copy, so that you are actually going where you want to go and you're taking the reader where you want them to go. So I would say that's one of the most important.
That's a great one. And I'm going to add on to it because I have this thing where of course, at a particular landing page, say it's an open house, and so you're at an open house landing page. And of course, your goal is what? To get someone to register for open house. But I like to put it in terms of the student first. Like, what's my goal? And a good question is what you already raised. How do you want them to feel out of this landing page? And then, of course, the measure of success is the registrations. But I like to think about, okay, how do I want someone to feel? And I think that helps me a lot with my approach in the writing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think all of that together, you're in a good place. Yeah.
Let's talk about some other specific types of marketing materials. We've talked a little bit about email, website, but what about how do you change your approach? We just mentioned landing page, but we're also often doing social media, maybe an admissions brochure, maybe a program level brochure. We might even be writing an email that comes from, a program director. There's a lot. So how does your approach change when you're writing for all different mediums and often within 1 hour, right? Like we're working on this landing page and then I'm going to this email and then I'm maybe writing a presentation. Like how do we deal with that rapid change?
Right. And I think we've kind of already hinted at it because with each piece of content, there's going to be a different goal. So knowing what the goal is, knowing where you want to take people with that piece of content, knowing who it is you're talking to, that's very important. And then really knowing maybe the rules of engagement for each platform. So, with a landing page, you want to think about the headline. You want the copy to be visually appealing. Got to have that call to action, all those things. And with social media posts, of course, it's shorter. You have less space. Really, again, making the most use of that space that you have with these things that we've already talked about. What's the goal? How do you want people to feel? Who are the people that you're talking to? Really keeping all that in mind. So I think no matter what we're writing, it feels like those are the main components. And it's really just a matter of changing it up in terms of the format for each piece of content. So for a brochure, for example, it can be persuasive as well, but it's also maybe informative. So strong headline, bullet points, sections, all those kind of things. So it's really about maybe all of that together.
I'm going to go back to what you were describing earlier about how you like to sit and imagine yourself as the audience. And I'm going to say that probably the thing I'm most guilty about when I'm working on writing is when I'm doing it quickly and moving from one thing to another, I'm not taking the time to recenter myself on the new audience because I might have just been working on a landing page. Let's say it's for biology. So it's students interested in biology. And now I'm writing something that's financial aid that's going to parents. But I might not have because I'm rushing. But now from what you're saying, I'm realizing for myself, I probably end up spending more time because I haven't taken the time to recenter myself on the goal and the audience. And then I'm like just writing and deleting and writing and deleting. And I'm probably wasting a lot of time along the way.
No, you're absolutely right. I think just taking that little bit of time I like the word you used, recenter, really refocus, put yourself in the place of the new audience, the goal, and those kind of things. I think you're absolutely right. That will be helpful.
And then the other thing I really wanted to talk about with you in particular is I think a lot of people in enrollment marketing or maybe admissions, we've gotten thrown into copywriting.
Right.
Really by necessity. So it's not maybe what we set out for in our careers or what we pictured would be some of our job duties, but writing is just so essential to pretty much everything we're doing in this field. So whether you're the one producing it or you're the one reading it, editing it, there's roles for everyone. So I want to know what your advice is for people who don't consider themselves writers, but have to write copy as part of their job.
I feel like I keep going back to the same thing, but when you start with the audience and the goal, you're in a good place. And so what I tell people who are not really writers is imagine that you're sitting down, with one person from that audience, and you're in a coffee shop and you're having a cup of coffee together and you're talking to them about the program or financial aid or whatever it is that you need to write about, just to write what you would say to them. I've even suggested at times, this might sound kind of funny, if it's a person that processes more out loud than by writing, that you can use a transcription recording kind of thing to say what you want to say and transcribe it automatically. And that can give you a very rough draft to get started. But I think that can help if someone really isn't a writer, but can communicate. It's just not in writing usually. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes complete sense. And it maybe helps take the fear of writing out for people.
Right.
Because we all typically in these roles, we're talking to students and families at some point, right? So what does that conversation look and sound like? What would we be saying to them? What would we be showing them? How would we be connecting with them in our language? Plus, conversational language and tone is better for reading online anyway, right?
Absolutely, yes. So that it definitely works. Yep.
I love that idea. And then also, any specific tools or resources that you really recommend people look into around this idea of copywriting?
Well, I like using, and you guys may already use this, or the folks that are listening may already be using a content mapping tool. I created my own just with a spreadsheet. There are, lots of templates out there for different kinds of tool, mapping tools, but it really lays out your audience, the questions that they're asking. I mean, it's a place where you can kind of work all that out. And then the content that would speak to them at every phase of their journey, from awareness to being an advocate for your institution. So I really like using content mapping tools. I also have used for several years Headline Studio by CoSchedule for headlines. Are you familiar with that tool?
I'm not. Tell me.
So someone shared it with me a few years ago, and I really enjoyed it. I think it is AI driven possibly, but you can put in a title that you're working on, and it will help you know how good the title is compared to other titles that are out there. And then if SEO is really important to the particular page that you're working on and the headline you're working on, it can also help you make it stronger with SEO. That's a great tool. They also have I think they call it a headline template. I forgot the name of it, but it's a package that you can download that has like power words and emotion words and formatted, headline, different kinds of headlines. So that's downloadable from their website. And I also like that as a resource. And then I'll have to give a shout out to the new book, Mailed It.
Yes.
Because everybody in my network is talking about it, I feel like, and I just have gotten mine. And so I'm getting ready to dig into it. So I think that's a great resource for folks.
For those, no one can see me because we're on the podcast, but I'm holding up my signed copy of Mailed It to show Julie right now.
Yep. So those are a few things. We could probably talk about a lot more, but those are a few things that I rely on pretty regularly.
I'll throw a couple out just because you brought up transcription. I like to use Otter AI for transcription.
Me too.
And even at the free level, you can get a lot done. So I recommend checking out Otter AI. You can have the app on your phone, or you can just log into it from your computer as well, if that's where you happen to be doing it. And then I actually, through my newsletter that anyone can sign up for at AllisonTercio.com, I actually have this new resource I just made where you can take student goals. I've given 15 sample student goals, and I've crosswalked them to institutional metrics. So for instance, if a student's goal is to feel confident in their college choice, then what would we see on the institutional side? Because we have to get to our institutional goals, right? We want to center around student goals. So what would we see if that was happening? If students were feeling more confident in making your school their choice, you would see your average day of deposit move earlier. You're going to get more students submitting an enrollment deposit earlier. So things like that. So I've given 15 student goals and ideas for what the enrollment metrics could be, which might be helpful for what we've been talking about here, which is how can you marry what you're trying to accomplish as an enrollment marketer and for the institution with what the student needs in that moment.
Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds like a great resource.
Awesome. Julie, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a fun conversation. I really enjoyed being here with you.
I'm absolutely positive our listeners are leaving with a better understanding of how to elevate their copywriting, no matter where they're coming in on the skill level with copywriting. Whether you think you're a copywriter or not, we pretty much all are at this point. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. If you found today's episode helpful, please pause for a moment to recommend the application to a friend or leave a review. It's the best way to support the show and help others discover these insights. Remember, great copywriting can set your enrollment marketing apart. So take these tips to heart and start experimenting with your next project. Until next time, keep innovating. The application is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed tech shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea. And they feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Day Kibbolds, Jeremy Tiers, and so many other of your favorite higher ed leaders. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.